Hello, Kidney Warriors. James here from Dadvice TV, your online kidney health coach. And this is Dadvice TV Live. Now, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, thanks for being here. It is great to have you be part of the Dadvice TV community of kidney warriors focusing on learning about diet, learning about how their body how different nutrients interact with our body, how to live a better life while we just happen to have kidney problems. Now, if you are new, I am a kidney warrior. I was diagnosed with kidney disease like so many people, stage 5. I had no clue I had kidney problems. But I've worked very closely with my doctor, got my blood pressure under control, became more active, and most importantly, started eating healthy. And by doing all of that, I started to improve my overall health. And as it has improved, so have my labs. I don't have a single symptom, and I am full of energy, feeling great, loving life, and just happen to have some kind of bad kidneys. Now, when it comes to kidney disease, there's a lot of things that we feel we lose control over. And our doctors are telling us, don't do this, don't do that. But one thing we have control over is what we eat. And it can seem confusing, especially for those that are newly diagnosed. What do I eat for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner? What things should I limit? What things should I not eat that often? Well, the best resource to find out about what to eat, it's not me. It's not the random people on Facebook or on Google. It's from a renal dietitian. They went to school. They learned all about nutrition and kidney disease. And a lot of them, like our guest tonight, have actually worked for so long with kidney patients, with dialysis patients, and they know the secrets to loving food, not being afraid of it, and taking care of your kidneys. So let's go ahead and let's welcome our guest tonight. From Plant Powered Kidneys, you know who it is. It's renal dietitian, Jen Hernandez. Hey, Jen.
Hi, James. Hi, everybody. Very excited to be here tonight. I'm looking forward to catching up with everybody and talking again about food. But for those of you, if this is your first time on Dadvice or your first time seeing me, my name is Jen, and I am a renal dietitian. I am a registered dietitian here in the United States, and I'm also board certified in renal nutrition. So my specialty is all things kidneys. I started working in dialysis when I was a newer dietitian working in the hospital and dialysis, and I got tired of seeing people coming through into the clinics day after day, feeling shocked and wishing they could have done something to protect their kidney health earlier on. And that is where I started Plant Powered Kidneys. I started working with people online, sharing information on our Plant Powered Kidneys blog, on our social media, on Facebook and Instagram, to give more information to empower people so that they know, so that you know that there are things that you can do. There are so many things that you can do to protect your kidney health and to prevent future kidney failure. It is absolutely possible. And we see it all the time at Plant Powered Kidneys with our course, with our private clients. We have several dietitians at Plant Powered Kidneys that help people with their own renal diet. And we have tons of resources on our blog, which I love coming on here and chatting with all of you about. So looking forward to tonight. Really, really excited and can't wait to jump in.
Awesome. And before we jump in, I want to make sure everyone knows about the Plant Powered Kidneys Facebook group. It has grown so much, and what I love best about it, besides all the positivity, is the recipes and the pictures. People, they're making breakfasts, they're making meals, they're making lunch, dinner. They're taking pictures. They're telling you, hey, here's what I did. Here's what I added. Here, I found this at the store and I'm using it. So many ideas from others with kidney disease being shared right there. So if you're a picky eater, there's going to be a lot of things in there to try to find out what you like. And I've discovered so many new things that I didn't even know you could eat, like the brewer's yeast. I'm still not on the fence. I'm still on the fence with mushrooms. Haven't gone over there yet. but like I'm constantly cutting up radishes, cooking them in my air fryer. Whoa, learned that from Jen. That is my substitute for red skin potatoes. I make
Mm-hmm.
those up. I put a little bit of plant-based butter on them and some spices. Oh my goodness, it is a great side dish for my meals. I would have never discovered all this variety, all these new things that I could enjoy if I didn't go to the Plant Powered Kidneys Facebook group. So I encourage everyone, when you're done watching this video, there's a link down below in the description. Go over and join the group. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's so good. I literally have it up right now on my screen as I was taking care of things during the intro. And I just go through and I see these pictures of food. I'm just like, go, go, go. Everybody, get your pictures up there and share how cool, how fun food can be. The renal diet is not just bland and boring and tasteless and lacking color. It is very colorful. It is so delicious, and you will see that in our group. You will see that with so many people sharing their pictures. It is absolutely a thrill to be a part of.
Yep. Now, starting our day off is breakfast typically.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's been a long time since I've eaten breakfast. I kind of do some intermittent fast. I don't start eating until around 11 in the afternoon. I've kind of skipped breakfast, but it is an important meal to get you started right, to give you that energy that you need to get started in the day, especially if we got to go to work. Don't want to be sitting in traffic or anything with a grumbling stomach or anything like that. So and cereal is a very common breakfast. And I'll tell you, our discussion today is from the Plant Powered Kidneys blog. So anybody out there that wants to follow along, there's a link below, or go to plantpoweredkidneys.com, click blog. But I looked through the blog, and I know the cereals that I used to eat that I thought were healthy, oh my goodness, they weren't. How do I choose one now that I've got to be even stricter, or healthier is probably the better way to say it? How do I choose a kidney-friendly cereal?
That is a big question, and we will definitely dive into all the bits and pieces of that tonight, because there are a lot of different components when it comes to finding the best cereal for kidney disease with an individual person. Because, James, you and I have talked a lot about how CKD is not cookie cutter. Not everybody has the same situation. And just because one person has stage 3 doesn't mean the other person with stage 3 is following the same diet or doing the same things. You talked about enjoying those radishes. There's probably somebody following or somebody watching now who is like, oh, I could never do radishes. And that's okay, because everybody has their own needs and their own preferences. And we like to merge preferences with the goals and the things we like to focus on. So the first thing that you have to look at when it comes to choosing a cereal for your diet, you've got to look at the serving size, because cereal serving sizes are all over the place.
And they're small compared to what, let me tell you, I got the big bowl, filled it up with cereal, and then I was pouring like, I don't know, half a quart of milk, it seemed like, in there. I was eating probably like 6 servings. They're all different, but none of them are gigantic. So you really got to be careful.
No, I think the biggest I've seen is like a cup, but typically it's 3/4 of a cup or a half or a third of a cup. Even the hot cereals, especially, some of those are really, really small because they expand, like cream of wheat, which we'll talk about. It's only 3 tablespoons. It's a very small amount for the serving. But when we think of sitting down to a bowl of cereal, just like you said, we'll pour a big bowl of it, and bowls typically are really large in size anyway. So it creates this distortion for us in thinking about what is the right serving size. So read the label and look first at the serving size, because that's always going to guide you into more information when you look at the other numbers that we're going to talk into. So serving size, number one thing that you've got to take a look at. The next thing that you need to look at is the carbohydrates. Because cereal is considered a carb, so we have the different major food groups. carbohydrates include cereal because it's made typically of whole grain or sometimes processed grains. But either way, it's made from grain, it's made from wheat, rice, corn, it's made from grains. So it's in this carbohydrate category. And what makes it really important to look at is the type of carbohydrates. So when you're looking at an ingredient list and you're looking, or I'm sorry, not ingredient list, when you're looking at the nutrition facts, and you're looking at the carbohydrates, you're looking at your total carbohydrates, you're looking at your fiber, you're looking at the total sugars, and you're looking at added sugars. Sometimes they have sugar alcohols in there too, depending on the food or the cereal. So these different types of kind of these internal descriptions of carbohydrates will really give you an idea of if it's a kidney friendly cereal or if it's something that you know that's probably not something you should include all the time. Not never, but just maybe not your routine go-to cereal for your breakfast. So when we look at carbs, and the most important thing, we're looking at fiber, it's really, really fantastic if you look for a cereal that has at least 3 grams of fiber. It doesn't sound like a lot, but you'd be surprised with how many cereals don't meet that qualification.
Ooh.
And chances are they're the cereals that your kids or your grandkids are really interested in having, and it might be really colorful and sugary, but it's maybe not so high in the fiber section. So for you, a higher fiber cereal is really, really important because fiber is so important for our gut health. And fiber comes from carbohydrates because, again, it's under that category of carbohydrates. On the nutrition facts, it is part of that carbohydrates group. So try looking for a cereal that has at least 3 grams of carbohydrates. The other thing that you want to be looking at that is not so good is the added sugars. This is very, very common for cereals. Again, if you think about the frosted this, the sugar coated crispy that, all those descriptive words that they use for cereal.
Mm-hmm.
It basically means, hey, we coated this in sugar, so you'll eat it, because our brains really respond to sugar. So they put sugar in there so that we eat more, and then we buy more, make them more money. It's not really good for us though. So we want to be careful with how much added sugar is in our cereal. Many cereals will have it, like I said. So instead of looking at 0 grams, just try to keep it under 12 grams per serving. So we're not looking, again, for like absolute no flavor, no sweetener, because sometimes there are great cereals that will have some added sugar, but you really, really enjoy them. So we're giving this guideline to say it's okay to have some because we do have an allowance for added sugar in our day.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just keep it down to that amount, and that will help keep things under control. Now, an important thing to kind of remind you about is that serving size. So if you see, it's under, let's say it's 10 grams of added sugar per serving. Great. It's under that recommendation that Jen had, under 12. But the serving size is a 1/4 cup. This would be an example of like granola. Granola
Mm-hmm.
is typically higher in sugar, higher in fat, and very small portions. That would be an example of something that you might not want to pick because that portion size is not going to be enough. Or we'll talk about how you could find a way to fit it in, because there are some ways that you could modify it in a diet. But in general, you're not just going to sit down to a big bowl of that, because that is sugar on sugar on sugar, not good for blood sugar control, whether or not you have diabetes. And it's not going to be protective for kidneys because added sugar, too much sugar in the diet, can be pro-inflammatory. It can cause inflammation and create a unhealthy environment that the kidneys are trying to survive in.
Now, my go-to cereal, which I thought was healthy because it sounds healthy, was Raisin Bran. I loved Raisin Bran. And the only reason is because of all the sugar.
Have you looked at it?
Oh, I just pulled it up. So, positives, 7 grams of fiber per serving. Awesome right there. I love that.
Yeah.
Serving's only 3/4 of a cup. I can't get by with 3/4 of a cup. I need more. Mm-hmm. But sugar per serving, 17 grams. Woo.
Yeah. And so if you're doing, let's say, a cup and a half, you're doing 2 servings, you're doubling that added sugar,
Hmm.
maybe 3 servings, tripling it. It just adds up so quickly. And for this as only one component, and it's not even yet a balanced meal. All the cereal commercials, if you guys haven't if you haven't noticed,
There's
they
all
always
that
say
food. Yeah.
part of a balanced breakfast. Read, you need to add more foods to make it a balanced breakfast. So to take one ingredient of a meal and allot all of that added sugar into that one part, like that's what makes it pretty tough. So, uh, yeah, I mean, Raisin Bran, health halo. People think it's healthy. It has bran in it. It has fruit in it. Sounds like it would make sense, but when we look at the numbers, it doesn't quite make sense. So, and that actually kind of leads into, because maybe you can tell us with that information, the next part is potassium. And this is something that some people need to be careful of, and some people don't need to worry about. Some people need to have a lot more potassium. The thing with potassium in cereal is that it can be really sneaky and it can add up pretty quickly. So, in general, we're looking at this threshold of 200 milligrams to tell us if it's high or low. Under 200 milligrams per serving, it's considered low. Over 200 milligrams, we're looking at high per serving. If you double a low one, it could turn into a high one. But, James, how much potassium is in the Raisin Bran?
Okay. Now, before we do that, I
Okay.
looked up how much sugar was in Fruity Pebbles.
Oh, no.
There's less than in Raisin Bran.
I mean, I will say that when I've had Raisin Bran, I can see the sugars I can see the sugar. I can physically
There is
see it. There is
9
that much
grams.
sugar.
There is pretty much 50% of the sugar in Fruity Pebbles, and no one would think Fruity Pebbles is healthy. So
Yeah,
you asked about potassium. Let's see if I have potassium on here. I'm looking. Oh yeah,
it
there.
should.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
So, so here's the thing. There's two numbers. One without milk,
right.
because I don't eat my cereal dry. Without
Hmm.
milk, 280 milligrams of potassium.
Okay, so just the cereal alone and just that 3/4 cup is
Yes.
280 milligrams. So that's over that threshold of 200 milligrams we are talking about. So Raisin Bran is considered a high potassium cereal. It still doesn't quite meet the cut because of the added sugars.
Mhm.
But if somebody needs to have more potassium, maybe this is something that they could enjoy and then, add something else to it to make it a little healthier, maybe split it with another cereal, something like that. But in general, people who think Raisin Bran is automatically a healthy option, that might not be the case, especially if you need to be careful with potassium. And I know we had our whole talk before
Oh my
about milk.
goodness. Okay, hold on. I looked at the potassium Fruity Pebbles. Okay, Fruity Pebbles. It's a rainbow of sugar. It has half the sugar of Raisin Bran. It has 1/11th of the potassium. It has 20 milligrams of potassium per serving.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have that whole grain. It is not made from a lot of nutrient dense food. So it doesn't surprise me. It probably has like no fiber in it as well. It's probably pretty minimal.
Zero. No
Yeah.
measurable fiber.
Yeah. So you're essentially eating a bowl of sugar in something like Fruity Pebbles, which makes sense. I mean, you look at it, you're like, oh, I'm eating sugar. This is sugar.
Sorry to interrupt there, but I just saw this. I'm like, wait a minute. My Raisin
Hmm.
Bran is even worse than I thought compared to something no one would think is healthy or part of a healthy breakfast. Fruity Pebbles.
Yeah, I think when we start diving into this, and I see some posts and some comments about, the interesting finds that people get when you start looking at the labels and looking at this information, and especially with kidney disease, we kind of start to balance out, or we start to prioritize the things that we really want and the things that we don't want in a cereal. It becomes a little more clear cut as to
Mm-hmm.
finding a good one and to seeing the ones that really aren't the greatest options. So the potassium guideline, that's another option for people to determine, how kind of where you're going to go when you're looking at your cereal. Do you need to fall into that low potassium? Have you been told to follow a low potassium diet? Or do you need to have more, or just not necessarily worry about the potassium? But usually we're looking at like 200 milligrams if we're putting these into categories.
Yeah. And then we
So
got the sneaky snake.
yeah, then we've got phosphorus, which
Hmm.
is it's in cereal. It's in so many things, you guys, and it is sneaky because I've talked about this with students and clients, and even here that it can come in different forms. And cereal is really sneaky because there are a lot of fortified cereals, and these fortified cereals will use phosphorus to fortify the cereal.
Hmm.
So, one of my most common examples is that cream of wheat that I mentioned. So, cream of wheat is a fortified hot cereal, and it is a good source of iron. It has, I think, 8 milligrams or something like that. It has a lot of iron per serving, which is fantastic. But then we look at the ingredients list, which is where you're going to find the type of phosphorus, and it's orthoferric phosphate, I believe is what it is. So it's the iron that's bound to phosphorus in order for it to be processed and utilized within the cereal. So, yes, people are getting iron, but they're also getting a dose of phosphorus with it. And many fortified cereals will list phosphorus in the big lower section of the nutrition list. So,
Hmm.
you start going through the calories, carbohydrates, sometimes fat, but fat, carbohydrates, protein, fiber, all that kind of stuff. And then you get down into the micronutrients, and some of them have a very long list of all those micronutrients, all those other vitamins and minerals that they've added into the food to make it more of a balanced meal because they're adding in more vitamins and nutrients. Not always a bad thing, but again, if they're using phosphorus, so if you're seeing PHOS, if you're seeing Phos
Hmm.
in the ingredient list, that is a phosphate additive, and that type is highly absorbed into the body. So you want to be really careful with that, especially if you already have phosphorus issues. So if you have high phosphorus, if you're taking phosphorus binders, that this is something to pay attention to for your cereal, because this could be impacting your phosphorus labs enormously and you don't realize it, because a lot of people, cereal is your go-to meal. And so if you think of if you have a routine cereal every day, that's going to be adding up in phosphorus if you don't realize it.
Now, is all of the phosphorus always listed in the ingredients with the PHOS if we look in there, or?
If it's an additive, yes, but whole grains. So if you get a whole grain cereal, it might not have the phosphate additive, but it might list phosphorus, and that is the organic phosphorus. And that kind is not as highly absorbed, so it's not very much of a concern. So let's say you look at the nutrition facts and you see phosphorus and it says 15% of the daily value. That 15% is actually more like 5% because only a fraction is absorbed. But nutrition labels can't get into all that nitty gritty. They're just going to say this is how much phosphorus is in it. They don't get into the science behind the absorption rates and the different types of
Yeah.
phosphorus and all of that. They just say this is how much phosphorus is here. So that's why it's important to read the label. And if you have, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but if you come across a cereal that has baking powder, baking powder is phosphorus. And sometimes you will see in the ingredient list, it'll say baking powder, and then in parentheses, it'll say the sodium aluminum phosphate, or it'll list the baking powder ingredients as well, because baking powder is phosphorus. But sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just says baking powder, and you're kind of like looking for phos and you don't see it, but you skip over baking powder. Be careful, because that's also added phosphorus.
Uh-huh. And another thing I'm seeing, I'm sitting here looking at these labels, and every cereal that I am bringing up also contains not a crazy amount, but a sizable amount of sodium.
Yes, this is another one of those sneaky things. Typically, bread products are really infamous for high sodium. Cereal, also in that carbohydrate category, sometimes they add more salt to it. They add more than we would expect them to, because there is a lot of food science and there's a lot of these tasting trials that they go through to balance out the sugar that they have in there, to balance out the other flavors, and they will typically add salt. So It's not incredibly common, I would say, to have very high sodium cereals, but there can be some. It is very possible. And again, it's even more possible if you're having multiple servings. So something that is 150 milligrams of sodium is considered to be lower in sodium. But if you have 2 or 3 servings of it,
Mm.
it's high sodium. And
Yeah,
that's
we
not
got to
going to be great.
count the total servings.
Yeah, and that's why I keep going back to it because it's so important because cereal is not something that we typically think about serving size. And I challenge all of you the next time you sit down to have a bowl of cereal, I challenge you to measure it out based on the serving to see exactly how much you get in your bowl before you pour your milk. And we're not getting into the pour the milk first or pour the cereal first debate. We're talking about measuring the cereal, putting it in there. I want you to look at how much cereal counts as a serving and think about how that's impacting other things going on for you.
Yeah, it's such a small amount. I am focusing on losing weight because I've been eating too big of servings during COVID and sitting too much. Um, and I've been following the serving size on like making oatmeal, and even it is not that much. I'm like, there's
Mm-hmm.
got to be more than I could add to this besides just water to increase the size.
Yes, and I think we'll definitely cover some tips on how to do that because I think it is really important. We want to make it, cereal is not going anywhere, and I am not about to take cereal out of anybody's life, but I do want to talk about how you can incorporate it and you can feel better and you see a bigger volume of a meal that really feels more satisfying and enjoyable. I think that's a really, really important thing to look at.
Yep. And on your blog, you have a great chart. I'm going to bring it up here on what to look for when you are eating cereal.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that 3 grams of fiber you mentioned. To me, fiber is magic.
Mm-hmm.
I make sure that I'm getting the right amount. And when I wasn't eating very well and I've gained some weight, I was not getting enough fiber. And I blame that and plus my lack of exercise and larger portion size. I should have gotten more fiber and I wouldn't have to focus so much on my weight. No
Yeah.
more than 12 grams sugar, 200
Yep.
milligrams of potassium. Looking for the sneaky one, Phos, PHOS, and then whole grains.
Yeah, which I think it kind of segues into the conversation about hot cereals, but there are plenty of whole grain options that you can use as cereal. I mean, whole grains are a blank canvas. And if you think about the number one whole grain that we think of for cereal, which is, like you said, oatmeal, it is literally just something that you kind of build whatever you want with it. You add the flavors that you want. I don't think I've ever heard of somebody just sitting down to a plain bowl of oatmeal and not putting anything in it or on it or under it. You add stuff to it. So think outside the box and think of other options if you're looking for something different. If you're looking for just a different option, or maybe the oats are out because they're super popular all of a sudden and you can't get to them, there are other grains available. Quinoa makes a great option. It's higher in protein. So for those that need extra protein, like those on dialysis, quinoa is a great option. You can do barley, you can do buckwheat, you can do farro. There are so many great hot cereal options that you just cook them like a grain and you enjoy them however you like, with the toppings and the additions that you want to include. So, for the hot cereals, though, I did mention the one really, really popular one that I would say stay away from, and that would be cream of wheat,
Mm.
because cream of wheat has that added phosphate. That's the biggest issue that I have. And it is iron fortified. That's great. But with it comes the phosphorus. So instead of cream of wheat, I would recommend either steel cut oats, old fashioned oats, like any type of oat option that you can get your hands on. Ideally, which is really fun, the cheapest ones are the best options because they don't have as many additives. So the oatmeal packets, the flavored packets, those will have the added sugars already in
Mm.
there. Those could have other additives, including like the dry milk powder that they use, that can have phosphorus in it. Depending on what they use to preserve the fruit or whatever is in there, you're getting other things that you may not necessarily want to include. So just stick with something that is basic and that you can customize yourself really easily and much, much more affordable. So much cheaper to do just that big tub of oats than to buy 10 packets of oatmeal.
Yeah, and my secret for oatmeal is I love adding some cinnamon. It doesn't
Hmm.
add, it's not the cinnamon sugar, just a little bit of real cinnamon because it's
Oh, yeah.
strong. And I've gotten to where I like it. Not as much as grits. And I saw someone else mention grits in the comments. Oh, I love a good bowl of grits. Now,
I,
what are some other, so the hot cereals, I'm looking at the blog here. You mentioned the Quaker Oats.
mhm.
You mentioned a couple brands that are low in phosphorus and low in potassium. Is that kind of common with these? Because you're listing quite a few of them here in the hot cereals that are both low in potassium and phosphorus.
I would say in general, yes, but I can't make a guarantee because, of course, as soon as I say that, someone's going to pop out of the woodworks with the phosphate additive oatmeal bucket
Yeah.
or something. So, in general, the ones that are super plain, that don't really have a lot of fanciness added to them, those are going to be the easiest finds. I'm such a big fan of Bob's Red Mill. They have a lot of great products. They're big bags of old fashioned oats, they're big bags of all their grains, their farro. They have a ton of creamy hot cereals, and they do like 8 grain, 10 grain, a lot of good options. So I love theirs. Of course, Quaker old fashioned oats, that's a
Mhm.
standard.
That's what I
The
go for.
cans, yeah, it's hard to pass up because it's a couple bucks. It's a huge canister. It
Exactly.
lasts a while, and it's so multi-purpose. You can grind up the oats and to make an oat flour. You can make oat milk from it. I mean, you can do a lot of stuff with it. It's
Sometimes
really,
I
really easy.
sprinkle them on stuff just for
Yeah.
like, hey, just to give it a little extra crunch or something. Believe it or not, I've actually not heavy amounts, but I've added it to salads too. Just sprinkle a little bit, like, hey, I'm like, there's some fiber in there.
There's
Come on,
fiber. Yeah.
add it to my salad for me.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to do is to put it in smoothies because it takes, like, let's say a blueberry smoothie, it turns it from a blueberry smoothie to a blueberry pie smoothie. So good. It's so good.
Ooh.
And it doesn't take a lot, just like a couple tablespoons, a quarter cup maybe. It doesn't take a lot to give it. And it's that oat. And I guess I think about like blueberry crumble or something like that. You think about that oat topping. Um, I don't know. It's just magic. It's magic. And that's one of
Yeah.
the beauties of the old fashioned oats.
Awesome. Now, are there, so when it comes to hot cereals we need to keep an eye out for, you mentioned the cream of wheat. Are there any other hot cereals that kidney patients should probably just be like, let's skip that one and go for one of these many other options that are out there?
There's not, I guess I would say more in general, like if we're looking at the different flavors, because hot cereal does come in a lot of flavors as well. And just know that if you're getting a sweet one or a savory one, you're going to be getting added sugar, extra sodium, and you might have much more control over how much you would actually eat if you just got the plain one and added some of that flavor yourself. So, or sometimes people find out when they get the plain one and then they add to it, they don't realize how much their taste buds have depended on a flavor like the butter flavored grits or something. And then,
Hmm.
oh, just add a little bit of butter. And like, no, it doesn't taste right. I'll add a little bit more. I'll add a little bit more. And then you realize, wow, like
There's a
maybe
lot of
that,
butter flavor in
yeah,
there.
yeah, maybe that packet that was already done, maybe it's just not really the healthiest because they put a lot in there. So
Yeah.
it's definitely something to pay attention to. Anything that's already adding flavors, in a sense, they're adding convenience, but what they're really adding is extra ingredients, potentially additives, extra calories from added sugar. They're not really adding extra fiber, not when they're doing flavors. So that's something that you really want to pay attention to when it comes to looking at all those different fancy flavors and brands.
Yeah. And even when I do look, sometimes I'll be like, okay, I've got a busy week, so I might go with some of those packets. It's hard to find the low sugar, high fiber ones.
Hmm.
Kroger has them, which I like. but they always sell out. It seems like either everyone likes them or they don't stock enough of them. But you got to look to find the low sugar, high fiber. And the high fiber really isn't high fiber. It's pretty much normal fiber for a breakfast.
Yeah, and so we can talk really quick about fiber too. When we're looking at, let's say, a day goal of fiber, we're looking for women at least 25, men is going to be closer to the 35, 38 range, but a little bit more is also good too. But if you're looking for that minimum of 25 to 35 grams, a third of your day, let's say, coming from breakfast, it would be great if you could get at least 8 or 9 grams of fiber
Mhm.
in that meal. And I know I said cereal, we're looking for just 3 grams, but we'll talk about how you can add more fiber into it. But that is definitely something to be thinking of making sure that you're getting enough fiber throughout the day, because fiber is also not something that you want to have all 25 grams in one sitting, because that will be very, very unpleasant for your gut.
And fiber is one of those things where you think more is even better. You can actually get too much fiber and it stops working like fiber. It
Oh,
works
yeah.
like cement.
Yep. Yep, exactly. There is such a thing as too much of a good thing.
Yes. Oh, I learned that the hard way. Not something I looked forward to. Now, looking in your blog, uh, there's a list. Let me bring this up here on the screen because I want to make sure everyone knows that this information's in here. You have a list of some very low potassium cereals for those that
Yeah.
want to watch their potassium or on a potassium restriction. Here's some cereals, and you've got the brands and everything here.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I pulled some up that were really on that low end. Because, for example, somebody on dialysis who has potassium issues, who's struggling with controlling their potassium, this might be a better option because you're going to really have a lower amount. Newer research is looking into exactly how strong that diet and potassium connection is. But if it is something that you're really concerned about, if your healthcare team is telling you that you've got to really pull back on potassium, take a look at your cereal and see if you can make an easy swap, find a lower potassium cereal, and then pair it with a low potassium milk. Like unsweetened almond milk is a great low potassium milk option. Cow's milk is higher in potassium. So that is something, if you are having, let's say, a moderate potassium cereal, and then you're having it with cow's milk, it could become a high potassium meal really, really quickly, especially if we go back to that portion size conversation. So here are some of the very low options that have essentially, like Kix has none. Granted, Kix is probably closer to that Fruity Pebbles comparison where it's not going to provide a ton of nutrients. And I do include in the label that I say, the very low potassium ones, they're not going to be really nutrient dense anyway. So
Mhm.
you're going to be missing out on the fiber. You're going to be missing out on other components like the whole grains. So I wouldn't automatically, if you don't have to, I wouldn't automatically jump on the very low potassium cereals. I would be looking at something that's in the more moderate section that still provides more fiber and other great nutrients too.
And one thing I think it's really cool about cereal is it's not expensive to have variety. So
Yeah.
you're not eating the same thing every day and kind of getting bored of it. My kids do that. They get onto something and then that's all they want, and then they get sick of it. My son,
Hmm.
he's hard to eat. He's a very picky eater. And
Hmm.
all of a sudden he liked SpaghettiOs, a certain brand only that he liked. It was from Aldi's. He liked it and he wanted it every day for like 3 weeks. And now he won't eat them. It's like, oh, we've lost that food. Variety is so important. And it's easy with cereal to pick ones that fit your
Hmm.
diet and have 3 or 4 and rotate through them. And it's not like you just invested in a whole bunch of expensive food, and it keeps well. Especially if you put them in those little
Hmm.
containers, pop the lid on them,
Yeah, those
boom.
airtight ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I love those.
Yeah. And another one of my favorite things too is mixing up cereals and having them at the same meal. literally pouring some of one cereal and another cereal in and making your own little hybrid cereal. This can be a really great option for those that need to be careful with potassium. But let's say you're not really crazy about any of the very low potassium cereals, or the Forager, the grain-free O's, the strawberry ones.
Mhm.
It's like strawberry Cheerios. You could do that with another cereal that's a little bit higher in potassium. So you're giving yourself more volume of cereal, but you're not giving yourself more potassium. It's going to be a lot lower in potassium compared to like a double serving of a higher potassium cereal.
I cannot believe I've never tried mixing cereals or even thought of it. And neither do my
Oh,
kids. And you see people go, I don't do this anymore, but I remember going to the soda machine and mixing sodas. I've
oh
never mixed
yeah.
cereal. And mixing sodas doesn't work for the most part. Once you get to that third flavor, it's just bad.
Yeah, yeah. I remember doing that as a kid, and it was more of the control of like I get to pick whatever I want and I'm gonna choose all of it. And then you
Yeah.
drink it, you're like, this just tastes like sugar water, which I'm totally into right now. and then and then later you're like, okay, yeah, that wasn't good.
Yeah.
But
At the most, I would
absolutely.
mix a little bit of like 7 Up with tea or something like that. That was like as far as I would go. Two things. That's it.
Well, you could do more with cereal if you want. I think it's really fun to pick some of the ones that have like fruit flavors in them, and then some that maybe have like a cinnamon flavor to them. Like Life has their cinnamon flavored cereal, Chex has their cinnamon flavored, and then adding it to something that has like the strawberries in it, the honey bunches of oat strawberries. Kind of mixing up those different flavors can be really, really enjoyable. And again, it gives you more volume, it gives you more variety, it gives you a bigger bowl of cereal to enjoy without literally doubling your potassium.
Yeah, and here's some more. So we just looked at very low potassium. Here's some that are low potassium from your blog. There is a lot of variety here for those that need to watch their potassium.
Yeah, so these are all under that 200 milligram qualification for potassium. And these are also really, really good options. Something I think that's really interesting is the grape nut flakes. Grape nut flakes are listed as a low potassium, but if we move down to the high potassium cereal, original grape nuts is high in potassium. And I guess it's not that shocking considering how nutrient dense and small they are. I always associated them with rocks. My dad
Yeah, I
had
never
them when
liked
I
them.
was growing up, and I felt like my teeth would break if I ate them.
Yeah, every time I see grape nuts, I'm just like, ugh, skip. But I've never heard of the Special K blueberry. So I love the Special K strawberries,
Yeah,
but this one, Special K blueberry with lemon clusters, actually, that sounds delicious.
doesn't it? It sounds really good. I was combing through their website and I was looking at their different cereal options. Really, really good options out there. And there are plenty that are low in potassium and that can fit. The thing is, though, we still got to look at the sugars. We got to look at the sugars. We got to look at those other components of what we're talking about to make a really kidney friendly cereal rather than just hitting one. Because I remember back in my dialysis days, the cereal handouts, that was the only qualification, low in potassium. As long as it's low in potassium, we don't care. I care. I care if it's too much sugar because that's not good for your health and that's not something that we want to be having all the time. So that's why I'm a little, I don't want to say stricter, but I'm a little more cognizant. I'm a little more aware of some of these other things. And I didn't want to just put an article out there to say, forget it. You can do as much added sugar as you want. I don't even care.
Ugh.
No, we should be paying attention to that. I think that still makes sense, especially if you want to keep protecting your kidney health. We do need to look at all of these different components.
Someone just wrote, I always get hungry watching these lives. Hey, let me tell you,
Ugh,
same boat. I'm in the same boat. I didn't get
I
dinner
had dinner
before
before.
tonight.
I
I
did.
usually do, but I was so busy running around with the kids trying to do some stuff, and I forgot dinner, and I was like, oh, let's get it later. Well, we end at 8 o'clock, so that's pretty late. My stomach's grumbling a little. Not as much
Yeah.
as sometimes, but
I know mine's gotten pretty bad before and I was like, I can't wait. I know myself. I know I will cut it early because I will be so hungry. I'll be snacking on my own cereal. Yeah. So But it's always good. A good appetite means that you're doing good. So
Yep.
that is
Now,
always a
what
good thing.
about those that are on dialysis? Is cereal something that fits into a diet for someone with, they have a lot of restrictions usually?
Yeah, the thing about dialysis is there is oftentimes a bigger potassium restriction or more potassium. So, in some cases, people on certain types of dialysis with certain prescriptions will need to eat a lot of potassium, but not everybody. So, potassium is very much a polarizing topic with the diet, and it's very individualized. But in general, something that people on dialysis really do need more of is protein, because the process of dialysis includes removing protein, and we've got to put some back in. So, when I was writing this article and doing the research, I'm thinking of the lower potassium in general, lower potassium, higher protein. This is really different from somebody who has kidney disease not on dialysis, because more often than not, it's about limiting protein. It's about being careful because that protein would be damaging to the kidneys. If that same person on dialysis decided not to go to dialysis, which is very, very unsafe, if they decided though, protein would be very, very damaging, because their kidneys aren't not able to actually take care and process that protein. The protein is for the dialysis part. So for people on dialysis, we're looking at more protein. I love Catalina Crunch. They label them as keto. I'm not going to get into that. We did a talk about keto,
Yep.
but they do that kind of labeling. I like that they're higher in protein. That's what I like. Special K also has high protein cereals, and I really like those. I was kind of surprised. Kashi, however you say it,
Yep.
they do have high protein cereals, but they were all really, really high in potassium. So I wasn't really feeling strongly about promoting anything there, because most people need to be careful with their potassium. So those Kashi high protein cereals, be really careful. They were like 500 milligrams of potassium in a serving. So very, very high. So if you need a lot of potassium and you're on dialysis and you need the protein too, that could be a great option. But that's very few and far between, I would say.
Yeah. Now, my wife, she does eat cereal. She eats gluten-free cereal. She's everything gluten-free just because she feels that she may have a sensitivity to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, are there any concerns with the gluten-free cereals that are out there?
Well, I do like, and I often will recommend gluten-free options, because one, many times it means it's a lower protein item because the protein is taken out. So this is really, really great for people with CKD who need to follow a low protein diet. So I really commonly recommend gluten-free options, especially with breads and pastas and rice and cereal, for example. So, and the other thing too is there are some situations with CKD where gluten can be inflammatory. It can cause problems, whether it's an allergy, a sensitivity. There's research looking into the gluten and aggravating IgA nephropathy, which is a specific kind of kidney disease. So I wanted to include gluten-free cereals for those options, to show you that there are still gluten-free cereals that can fit into a renal diet. So some of the ones I have, again, Bob's Red Mill, huge fan, love them. I think they do a really, really good stuff, a really good job with all the stuff they offer. I looked through Barbara's, and Barbara's does have some good options. Not all of them I'm crazy about, and not all of them fall under the categories that we're looking at for potassium and all kinds of stuff. But some of them do qualify. Yep, there we go. So we have the honey rice cereal, the multigrain cereal, and then the Chex. That's always been something that gluten-free, dialysis friendly, not higher in protein, but still they're a great option. And then the Cascadian Farms, they have that good honey vanilla crunch, which is another great gluten-free option.
I love rice checks. I just realized I don't snack on those, and I used to. I'm gonna have to add that to my snack list. Just regular old
Oh,
rice
it's a great.
checks. Slice up some
Mm-hmm.
some nuts or something like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah.
I love it with sliced banana. I got to do some sliced banana in my cereal, and then I do some flaxseed in there, some ground flaxseed for some extra fats, some omegas, so the protein, the fiber. It really helps kind of round it out.
Yep. Now, speaking of rounding it out, whenever we see part of a balanced breakfast with cereal, and we talked about a little bit, it's just one part of it. What are some other things I can have for breakfast if I'm going to eat just one serving, which isn't a lot? What else can I add to have that kind of rounded out kidney friendly breakfast?
Well, for one, if you are only going to have cereal, that could be an opportunity, like we said, to stick to the very low potassium ones, and then maybe you can have two servings of it. Maybe that'll still fit for you. So you have a little bit more volume, but you're not having a ton more potassium. The other thing, which I think is really fantastic, is using cereal in a yogurt parfait. I think it is so fun, and yogurt does provide some great nutrients, whatever kind of yogurt that you want to have. You do the Greek yogurt if you need extra protein. You can do coconut yogurt, which is fantastic, cashew yogurt. So many great options. And then add some fruit into there, which makes it really enjoyable. And this is something really fun to do with your kids or your grandkids. Any type of food project that doesn't require a stove, doesn't require heat, and that you can just kind of put together and make it your own, can be really, really enjoyable. And then you just add the cereal, layer it in, put it on top, however you like. That can be a really good way to prepare for a snack ahead, to prepare for breakfast, however you like that. Another option we talked about is adding toppings to cereal. So I mentioned banana. If you don't have any issue with potassium, or if you really like banana, you can fit it in even in a low potassium diet. It's all about figuring out the allowance and where your potassium is coming from. But you can do low potassium fruit. Like berries are low in potassium and they provide a ton of fiber. So like you
Yeah.
were saying, James, some of those cereals not so great in fiber, but if you add in a little bit of berries, you're going to be adding in the fiber that you're missing. And you're adding in more volume. You're making it a much more enjoyable meal that you'll be able to feel really, really good about too.
Those are awesome, awesome ideas. And adding, blueberries. Oh, I absolutely love blueberries. There's so much goodness in them, and the fiber, the raspberries. Not a fan of blackberries. In Seattle, they are growing everywhere, and I got so sick of them because they got thorns, and they're all over our yard. But I love all the other berries except blackberries. Oh, and strawberries.
I
Oh, we go through so many of them
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, even cherries, you can do those. I mean,
Yes.
you can do a lot of different fruit. I think another great one is adding pears or adding apples. You can dice them up. You can even cook them down a little bit. Like apples they're firm, but if you cook them, add that cinnamon and then let it cool, add them in there or add them to your hot cereal. There's so many varieties and so many options. I think of cereal as like, think of it like the greens to your salad. Like you're not just going
Mhm.
to have the greens. Like, what are you going to put in it? What are you going to put on it? What are you going to do to really transform it and make it something that you really enjoy and add more nutrients to it? It's this great opportunity to really build it up and make it something to truly enjoy. And when we enjoy our food, we know it's good for us. We know that it's nourishing us. It just creates just this whole 360 degree of feeling really good.
Yep. And, you know, before yesterday, if someone would have said, "Hey, what are some breakfast ideas that are kidney friendly?" I would not have realized just how much variety there is, only because I currently skip breakfast. I get up, I'm busy, I'm going, and the kids getting them ready onto the bus, and then all of a sudden it's lunchtime and I'm ready to eat. I just don't have the time to do it. But wow, there really is a lot. We just got to keep an eye on that portion control, or that portion, the
Hmm.
serving sizes. That
Hmm.
is the root of this. Because even if you get something that's lower in phosphorus, if you're having 5 or 6 servings, which is what I used to do when I would eat cereal, it's no longer low phosphorus or low potassium. I've tripled it, quadrupled it, or more. But it
Yeah,
is
it
amazing.
definitely is something that adds up. And I think another thing too about that is because cereal in of itself, again, isn't very filling. It's not very hearty. That's why we eat more and more servings of it, because it's not very satisfying. So look to other things that you can add to make it more satisfying, like adding the fruits, adding some chia seeds or some nuts
Mhm.
or some flaxseed, adding something like that to give it a little bit more nutrients that your body's going to need to take time to digest. That's really what we're doing, is that we're giving your body nutrients that it needs to slow down and appreciate and enjoy.
Awesome. Now, before we run out of time, there's two questions that were asked that I definitely want to make sure you have a chance to comment
Okay.
on. One of them, Carol asked about plant-based bacon and sausage, and
Hmm.
I have not looked at the bacon or the sausages, but every plant-based item I look at is outrageous per serving on the sodium.
Yeah, they're definitely, and especially when they're trying to mimic the original, which is also incredibly high in sodium.
Yeah.
Their sodium is going to be the number one issue. The number two thing I would be looking at is phosphorus, because there's a higher chance that they have additives in there to preserve it, to mold it, to make it what they want it to be made into. And then potassium is going to be another issue. And finally, protein. If you are in the later stages, protein is going to probably be something that you need to buckle down on and maybe pull back on as far as how much you're eating. We always recommend to do a food journal, see how much protein you're taking in, to see if that's where you should be at, and talk with your healthcare team about what your protein goal should be. But adding something like that, it might not be the best bet. It might not be kidney protective. Yes, it's something that you can eat. You can eat whatever you want, but is it going to be what you want out of your life? Is it going to be helping fuel you and nourish you to where you want to go?
And the last one I want to get in right before we run out of time, someone asked, is there a good food tracking app that you recommend? You and I use the same
Ah,
one.
yeah. I love Chronometer. Chronometer it's so cool. They have a lot of great features. They have a free app which does a lot of fantastic stuff. Um, but they have a paid one that is really good too. And actually, we have a discount code for plant powered kidneys. If you find us on Facebook and you send us a message and you ask us about our discount code for Chronometer, we can get it to you. But find us on Facebook and we can get you, I think it's 10% off the gold plan. And
Awesome.
it's so cool. It tracks PRAL, it tracks the sodium or potassium sodium ratio, it tracks oxalates. You can put in your own recipes and then it'll give you a full nutrition breakdown. James, you can share it with your healthcare
Oh,
team,
yeah.
which your
The
healthcare team
web
will love you.
tracking is amazing. My doctor, a few days before my appointment, he logs in, he has the link, and boom, he sees all the summaries and how I've been doing, which means I can't lie to him. He can
I
see
mean,
it, which
there's,
is great.
yeah, yeah, the numbers are there, right? If you utilize it, and also the numbers in labs don't lie either. So that's the other thing too.
I try to convince him that there's a gravity issue where he has his scale, you know, and that's why I weigh more when I get on it. There's gravity is higher there for some reason.
I'm on some moon over here.
Yeah, although I want to be on the moon, way less.
Well, a different one, like a
Yeah.
Star Wars moon.
All right. It is now 8 o'clock, the top of the hour. Thank you so much, Jen. This was fantastic. And for everyone out there, there is a link to the blog, which has the things we discussed and all those lists of the different cereals and other items in there. Definitely go check that out. Don't forget, join the Plant Powered Kidneys Facebook group. So much great, helpful, positive, and supportive information out there. And if you haven't done so, please give this video a thumbs up. It helps YouTube to know, hey, people like this content, and then they show it to more kidney patients out there so that they can get access to it and they're not afraid to eat. Because when I first got diagnosed, and so many people out there say the exact same thing, we were all afraid to eat. It felt like nothing was on our diet when really almost everything can be part of your diet, but it does come down to looking at making it fit. Maybe you won't be able to eat as much of some things because they're high in sugar or high in something else, but you can usually make anything fit as long as you're staying healthy and eating based on your labs. All right, everybody. I will be back next week. Oh, Shelby will be here next week. Shelby from Plant Powered Kidneys is here next week. So is Dr. Rosansky. And then the week after that, we have Dr. Gibney back, who was here last month for the first time. Everyone loved him. Lots of great information coming here. The schedule is on dadvicetv.com. Right on the homepage, you scroll down. I got the schedule through the end of 2022. All the upcoming dates and times on there. Don't have all the topics. We fill those in as we get to them, and some dates might change as things happen later in the year, but it gives you a good idea of all the scheduled shows. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate all of you, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye, everyone.